I think it's the right time for me to do this interview because I feel like it was important to maybe let others know that it's okay. Let people know not to be ashamed, not to be afraid that people are going to look down on you. I erroneously thought things that weren't true, and I was mistakenly believing him. Everything he said to me, I believed. It's a shameful thing what our family members did, but it isn't a reflection on us. Things go wrong with them, but that doesn't mean that it's in us. We're just happen to share some genes. But I think it's time. Just wish that you would have died before all of this mess happened to these poor people, because you're nothing but a monster. Today, I can tell you, this is done. I will probably not speak about this bastard ever. My brother Ricky or I never did the things he did. I had no inkling of what was to come down the wire, I'll tell you that. No inkling at all. You think you know someone, you really don't. Even at a young age, he got in trouble outside the home. One incident happened where I noticed across the street, the hose was in the front door of the house. The neighbors weren't at home at the time, but he had put that hose in their house and turned it on. And the house was flooded from this hose. My mom just ran across the street, got the hose out of the house, turned it off. I think the house would have been ruined if I hadn't have noticed. It would have been a lot worse damage. So she asked Jimmy, "Did you do this? Did you put this hose in the people's house?" And he said, "Yeah." She said, "Why would you do that?" He said, "I don't know. I don't know." He never explained why he did it. He just said, "Yeah, I did it," and he laughed. But he admitted that. It was like one of the few things he had ever admitted to. And he got in trouble for it, but it didn't faze him at all. I mean, at this point, my dad would spank him. A lot of times he would just smile. He would laugh and shrug it off as, "You didn't get me. You know, you didn't penetrate this facade." I was seeing a dark side emerge from him. His lack of emotion when he would get in trouble was something we all should have been a little concerned about. Jimmy never mentioned our mom once we were not with her anymore. Never cried a tear. And it didn't strike me as odd until I had children of my own. And then I thought back to that time and thought, that's really weird that he never cried once for our mom. I cried for her. Ricky cried for her. Jimmy just didn't seem to care. Jimmy's relationship with Stella was different from the very beginning. For some reason, he wouldn't give her the time of day. I don't recall them ever having a normal conversation, ever. I believe Jimmy hated Stella. without a shadow of a doubt, he hated Stella. That's all he had for her was anger, just anger. Well, Stella had a favorite lamp. And one day it was broken when I came out of the bedroom. Stella came home. She saw the lamp was not there. And she was just beside herself. She was so angry. I didn't do it. Ricky wasn't home at the time. So she started grilling him about it. And he just kept denying it. I didn't break the lamp. I didn't do it. That's what his response was. I don't know. I didn't do it. And he would say nothing else. I knew he did it. He never admitted to it. He would take stuff from her that she liked or cared about. You know, he would break things.
What happened?
Where in the world would you come up with doing that even? It's so destructive. The reason he did these things was as a entertainment for himself. He thought they were funny, wanted to get a rise out of, just a rise out of anyone, for anything. One day, Stella was out and about doing errands. When she came home, she was crying. She was very distraught. She was just hysterical. And I guess there were some kids that were rioting on a corner near our house. And as she drove by, one of the kids threw a brick at the front windshield of the car. Glass shattered all over Stella. If the brick hit her in the head, it would have killed her. It was horrible. She's telling us what happened. Jimmy was right there with us, and Jimmy laughed. We told him, this is not funny. This isn't funny at all. He says, yeah, I think it's pretty funny.
Stop!
Jimmy just laughed.
What?
He just laughed. It's good. She deserved it. She didn't deserve that. What is wrong with you? Looking back now, I think that was another sign that we all missed. Because when you have pleasure at someone else's pain, there's something wrong with you. This is a picture of Jimmy. Smile was still there, but not the twinkle in his eye. That was gone. He's not the innocent little kid anymore. He's changing, all right. He's changing. In this photo, he was changing to where he was he wore a mask, I want to say. It's like he wore a mask. And everybody, you know, thought he was a good, nice boy. Which I think afforded him the luxury to do even worse things because nobody was suspecting him in his charming self. But what was starting to happen was he was doing more and more things that he would get in trouble for, serious things. Jimmy always just acted like he could do whatever he wanted. Nobody's gonna say anything to him. I think at that time is when things started to change for him. And we just didn't know it. And then things just got worse as we went. One day, it was before I had to go to school, and my dad had told me that Jimmy was caught at the neighbor Alice Stock's house.
Excuse me?
I said, "What are you talking about?" She was an elderly neighbor of ours. Jimmy was in the process of trying to steal something from her house when she woke up and saw him in there. Alice Stock recognized him and said, "You're Jimmy Rohde. What are you doing in my house?" And Jimmy just fled. He fled. So the police came, and Jimmy denied it, as usual. Even though Alice Stock called the police on Jimmy, he didn't get arrested. We have her saying it did, went at her with a knife and threatened her. Looking back, it was almost like he was anticipating getting ready to do even worse things to people. And he's, at this point, he's escalating. It eventually broke my stepmom and my dad up. They ended up splitting because of Jimmy. And I know he knew it was because of him. I know he knew that. And I felt bad for her. She got thrust into this. She was an okay lady. She really was. She did the best she could with us. She just didn't know what to do with 3 grown kids. Jimmy really just kind of lived despite her. And no matter what she said, he would just not even give her the time of day. He'd stop answering her even, and just sit there and stare into space. We all underestimated his hatred of Stella, even my dad. We all underestimated that. I was crushed. My dad was crushed. I wish that it would have been Jimmy, which is a horrible thing to say. But it's true. I really wish that it would have been the other way around. It was after that that Jimmy went all kinds of sideways. One evening, I got a call from my dad.
Hello?
And he was really upset. Yeah, I asked me if I was sitting down. Yeah, I'm sitting down. Don't tell me anybody else has died.
What happened?
He said, no, but what has happened is your brother went over and got into Stella's house and he raped her. I remember being incredulous, like I couldn't believe that it happened. I never in a million years thought he would do anything like that to her or anybody else. She called my dad, who was at work, and apparently when Jimmy knocked at the door, she was startled, but she wasn't afraid. Like she did not, otherwise she wouldn't have let him in. She had no idea that he was there to do her any harm.
Jimmy. Sure, yeah.
And then his look in his eyes changed, and Stella said he just got a whole cold look about him. And then he grabbed a hold of her, and I guess they wrestled around, and he ended up raping her. Jimmy told her, if you tell anybody, I will come back and I will kill you. I'm sure she must have been scared out of her mind. I never anticipated that kind of violence from him. And with Stella, it was brutal. I was sick to my stomach. It's terrible. It's awful. She told us, I'm not going to the police because if he finds out, he'll come back here and you'll kill me. I tried so hard to get her to change her mind. She would have none of it. So I respected her wishes and I didn't say anything. Well, after the incident happened, I came over to visit my dad and Jimmy came in and we were right in the middle of talking about it. We just asked him, is this true? What did you do? Jimmy, Stella says you raped her, so what, she's just making that crap up, dude? I guess. She hates me so much.
Just tell us what happened.
Why would she lie?
He's always had it out for
Jimmy denied it.
me. I didn't do it.
There was nothing else to talk about. We never spoke about it again. I believe he raped Stella because he was trying to after the incident with Stella, we just tried to tiptoe around it. We didn't speak about Stella around him. We just let that whole part of our life be. I think that it was a little bit of fear and denial because of the fact that I had already lost one brother and I didn't want to lose this one. I was in such a way that I tried to overlook a lot of things because of the fact he was all I had left. But I think deep down I was afraid of him. After he raped Stella, everything ramped up and he just got worse. One night, my family and I had gone to the drive-in. We came back from the movies and there was ambulances everywhere, fire trucks, police. I didn't know what had happened. Oh my gosh, I ran upstairs and my mom told me that Jimmy had went in and beat Grandma to a bloody pulp. My grandma said that he came and knocked at the door and she looked at the people and saw it was Jimmy. She thought, well, wonder what he wants. So she opened the door. My grandmother said he came in and started talking to her. She said he looked at me and he looked at me like I wasn't even there. Like he was looking right through her.
Is there anyone here?
And she said, Jimmy, are you okay? Jimmy, she said that a couple times to him and he didn't respond.
Okay.
And that's when she said he just came over and started strangling her. He didn't say anything to her. He didn't say a word. He just continued to beat her until she laid and pretended she was dead on the floor. And she said he finally left. And she was able to crawl to the phone and call 911. And the scene at my grandmother's was horrific. The whole kitchen was covered in laugh and discounted as, you are crazy. I would never do anything like that. It was some way he had about him. The trial for this was horrific in that they had this in the newspapers, the local newspapers, and they had my grandmother like up on the stand. One of the pictures they showed of her, you could tell she was old and frail. Eventually, my brother was acquitted of the charges of beating my grandmother and attempted to murder her. And they said there was not enough evidence to prove otherwise. They had reasonable doubt. So he was acquitted. They said my grandmother was old and was probably confused. I was pretty shocked when it came back with an acquittal. And therefore, he's back out. And because He didn't get in any trouble for doing that. I guess we took on the attitude when we're talking to Jimmy, we have to act like that was a big mistake and he really didn't do it. And that was part of what made me think for a moment, maybe he really didn't truly remember these things. Maybe he truly doesn't remember, and that's why he's so adamant that I didn't do it, I didn't do it. But that wasn't true. One day, I received a call from him, from Jimmy, while he was in prison. And he was all excited when he called. And I said, why are you so excited? What's going on? Did you get good news? Are you gonna get out? He said, no, I met someone in here, a really cool person. I said, who is that? He said, Ted Bundy. At this point, I just wanted to cry. And I told him, Ted Bundy, why are you even talking to him? Oh my gosh. I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. He continued laughing about it. He had met this horrible killer. And in my mind, I thought, what kind of stuff is he learning from him? He spoke to Ted Bundy at length about different things. One being that he should look at the want ads and look at the want ads in Oregon, which is where Ted Bundy said that he got a lot of his victims from. I think he definitely aspired to be like Ted Bundy. I think evil people have a way to hide that evilness that we don't see until they're ready to let it out. And then it's just awful for whoever they let it out on. He was evil through and through. So many people suffered because of him. One day, when I came home to visit my dad, there were police cars everywhere, all over our street. I didn't know what had happened, but ran in the house to make sure my dad was okay. Asked him, what is going on? He said the neighbor, Alice Stock, had been raped and murdered. And my dad and I looked at each other. Oh my gosh. Immediately, we both suspected that Jimmy had something to do with that. Because of the fact he had broke into her house prior. It seemed really coincidental that he would get out of prison, and within just a matter of a few weeks, our neighbor was killed. Looking back, I think he went back to Alice Stock's house to finish what he had attempted to do the first time he broke into her house. One day, I got a call from Jimmy. He told me, I've decided that I'm gonna change my name. Well, I can't get a fair shake with Adolph James Rhodey everywhere I go. People are gonna think that I'm guilty of something and I didn't even do anything. So I'm gonna change my name. What are you gonna change your name to? He told me Caesar Francesco Barone. I was like, what? What? Why would you pick that name? I just thought it sounded cool, he said. So he changed his name, but I figured maybe it's better because he won't be underneath the cloud of suspicion everywhere he goes. I knew he did things to my grandmother. I knew he did these things to my stepmother. But I was really hopeful that he was becoming a different person. I was proud of the fact that he joined the Army. When Jimmy first joined, he joined as Caesar Francesco Baroni, not Adolph James Rhodey. So they never knew of his name and his other records. Now I know the reason that he did it was so he could do more bad stuff and not get detected. My brother had a double life. He had another side that did horrible things. He was not telling me what he was doing with his spare time in Oregon. But there comes a point in time where you have to be open to the facts are staring you in your face. One night I was at the house, getting ready to watch America's Most Wanted. And America's Most Wanted comes on, and in front of my very eyes is my brother on the screen. My heart almost stopped. They were searching for the murder weapon of a particular murder that he had done with a firearm. Never in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought, here, my brother's gonna be on the screen. It was horrible. I was so ashamed. And then I immediately was angry because of all the stuff I was beginning to see. It's all lies, all lies. They were searching for my brother for multiple murders that he was a suspect in. Between 1991 and 1993, Caesar killed at least 4 women in Portland, Oregon. He also sexually assaulted at least 3 others. And most of his victims were elderly women who he raped and then strangled. After he was captured, Jimmy called me from jail one afternoon and told me that he had been arrested. He laughed and said, "I didn't do anything. Somebody's framing me for this stuff." I didn't really believe him, but that's what he told me. I just didn't have the strength to deal with it. I didn't have the strength to listen to a bunch of more lies. I never told him that I didn't believe him. I just was neutral when I spoke to him. I didn't know enough about the murders at that time. I didn't really know a lot about the murders and the rapes to confront him with it. I acted like my normal big sister because I loved him, and I felt guilty for loving him. I felt guilty that somehow I should have cut him at the knees and just been happy to do it, but I wasn't, and I really grappled with that. I wanted to do the right thing. I think that the law enforcement was interested in speaking to me because it was apparent that I didn't know a lot of these details. They came, and for about an hour, they went through all of the horrific things that he was accused of as a courtesy to me, because I was totally in the dark.
We know that all of this information is coming as a bit of a surprise.
They came with so much evidence, I was taken aback that all of this stuff had been occurring, and these were factual police reports, witness statements. I asked, do you think this is possible that he doesn't know what he's doing, that he somehow, his mind separates itself and he's not aware of his actions? And they told me there's absolutely no truth to that at all, and they can show me. And they proceeded to do just that.
No, unfortunately.
I thought that he had gone to Oregon to start a new life with his new wife and son. But apparently he was in Oregon continuing to murder and rape women, all elderly women. I don't know why he targeted the elderly people. First, I thought he did that because they were not able to fight back, maybe, easy targets for him. But later on, I started realizing it was more than that. I was so sure in my mind it was something to do with our mom. I believed he had issues with my mom and my mom leaving our life at such a young age for him. It's horrific to go back and think of all the things he did. It was very hard for me to think that he could be so cruel. And I changed that day, stopped thinking and trying to give him a benefit of a doubt, because there wasn't any. And at that point, I knew in my mind and in my heart that he was guilty. I had no choice but to acknowledge it and realize this is all true. And my first thought is I'm going to lose my last brother. I needed that at that time to help me to bridge that between how I thought my brother was and how he actually was. And all I had left in front of me was someone I did not know. It was horrible. It was horrible. I just wish I would have known sooner. I wish I would have known sooner. Nobody really knew that my brother was a serial killer, and I didn't really tell anybody. But it feels really good to say out loud, he's a monster and he's a murderer. It feels really good to acknowledge that and put that out to the world. My brother was a bad man, bad man. He was someone I didn't even know. And I'm not gonna grieve for him anymore. I am, for once in my whole 68 years of existence, I can be at peace about my brother, knowing that I'm not a bad person because he isn't. I'm not a bad person because he's a murderer, not me. He's the murderer.
They said the photograph stopped the war, that it changed how people saw suffering, turned pain into purpose. But I know better. It didn't stop anything. It just froze one man's final second, and I was the one who chose which second it would be. For years, I told myself the edits were harmless. Light, shadow, contrast, nothing more. But the moment I brightened his eyes, I darkened my soul. You can't manipulate death and still call it truth. Sometimes when the shutter closes, you don't capture an image. You capture a lie that keeps breathing. My name is Marco Bellini, born in Florence, Italy, the city of light and art, where even pain is painted beautifully. My mother was a piano teacher, my father a watchmaker. I grew up surrounded by rhythm and precision, two things that define both music and time. Maybe that's why photography felt natural. It's music made of silence, time made visible. I wasn't born brave. I was born curious. I wanted to see what others turned away from, the corners of truth that polite society pretended didn't exist. In the narrow streets of Florence, I'd photograph stray cats, rain puddles, the old man who sold roasted chestnuts. My teacher once said, "Marco, your photos make sadness look clean." I took it as a compliment. At 24, I got my first assignment with La Repubblica. A local protest had turned violent. I remember crouching behind a police barricade, feeling my heartbeat sink with the camera's click. It wasn't fear, it was thrill. The lens became my armor. War came later. Bosnia, Syria, places that made death casual. I told myself I was there for truth, to document, to reveal, to make people care. But deep down, I was chasing something else. Recognition. The kind that burns like a camera flash. Fast, blinding, addictive. Every journalist I met had that hunger. We called it the eye. But really, it was ego wearing ethics like camouflage. When I look back, I realize the first lie I told wasn't in the darkroom. It was the moment I told my editor I wasn't afraid of war. Truth is, I was terrified. But fear sells poorly, so I hid it behind a lens and let ambition develop in silence. I remember Sarajevo, winter 1994, snowflakes mixing with ashes, buildings that looked like skeletons wearing coats of soot. A little boy asked me if the camera could bring his father back. I didn't answer. I just took his picture. His eyes, too wide for his small face. That photo made the front page. They called it The Eyes of the War Child. That was the first time I tasted fame. And like all first tastes, it made me forget to swallow. I became addicted to applause disguised as empathy. Every photo that stirred outrage made me feel powerful, righteous. But somewhere in that power, I stopped asking what the pictures meant to the people inside them. Truth became performance. Compassion became composition. I started chasing not the story, but the angle. My colleagues used to joke that I could make a corpse look cinematic. They meant it as flattery. I accepted it as prophecy. And yet behind every shutter, there was a quiet voice in me, my father's, whispering, "Marco, precision isn't truth, it's control." I didn't listen. Because I had already learned the first rule of fame. Control the story, and the story will control the world. They say war is truth in its rawest form, that the camera never lies. But I learned that even truth, when framed, becomes a choice, and every choice leaves fingerprints. When I arrived in Aleppo in late 2012, the city was already exhausted. It smelled of cordite and rain. The buildings looked like half-remembered memories, edges torn by bombs, windows black as empty eyes. Children played soccer with cans. Mothers hung laundry in apartments without walls. Everywhere I turned, something was both alive and dying. That's what drew me there, the contradiction. I used to tell editors I wanted to capture the resilience of the human spirit. But really, I wanted to be close to the edge of something irreversible. It was the only place where meaning still felt earned. The press shelter was an old maternity ward, bullet holes through the nursery tiles. Every night, a chorus of generators hummed like insects. There were about 20 of us, photographers, journalists, translators, half ghosts already. We smoked cheap cigarettes, shared stories, and laughed at things that weren't funny. There's a strange intimacy in shared danger. It blurs the line between strangers and mirrors. That's where I met Elena Vargas, the Spanish correspondent. She was 32, with olive skin and short hair tucked behind one ear, a habit of squinting whenever she listened. Unlike me, she didn't carry a camera, only a recorder and a notebook full of half-legible sentences. Her eyes didn't flinch when they met death, but they softened when they met silence. She once told me, "The world doesn't need more pictures of corpses, Marco. It needs proof that we still feel." I wanted to disagree, but I couldn't, because secretly, I'd begun to feel nothing. The day everything changed was cold and orange, that strange light you only see in cities where smoke replaces clouds. Our convoy followed a Syrian infantry group through what was left of a residential block near Al-Shar. We moved carefully, stepping over rubble that still breathed heat. Every few minutes, distant shells punctuated the silence like commas in a sentence written by God's anger. There was a soldier, Rami, barely 20, maybe younger. He carried an old Nikon around his neck. He said his father gave it to him before the war. He smiled when he showed it to me, as if that small piece of glass could protect him from everything. "After the war," he said, "I'll take pictures of weddings. Real happiness, not this." I remember laughing, not cruelly, just reflexively. Because in Aleppo, even hope sounded like a lie. A few hours later, a mortar fell nearby. The ground shook like it wanted to forget us. When the dust cleared, Rami was gone. Just gone. His camera lay cracked beside his body, its film half exposed, as if trying to escape before the darkness sealed it. I took one picture, his hand reaching out from the debris, fingers open toward the sunlight, a child's doll lying near his palm. It wasn't dramatic. It was still, human, unbearably honest. And when I looked through the lens, something in me whispered, "This is it. This is the image that will make them listen." I told myself I was doing it for him. But the truth is, I was doing it for me. I wanted to be remembered for capturing something eternal. And in that hunger, I began to distort what eternity meant. When I developed the film that night, I stared at the negative until dawn. It was powerful, yes, but too dim. The shadows swallowed the emotion. The red of the doll's dress had faded in the blast, washed pale by dust and smoke. It looked incomplete. So I opened my laptop and began to adjust the tones. Just subtle touches. A little more light on the hand. A deeper red on the fabric. A cleaner edge on the horizon. It was nothing drastic, nothing dishonest, I told myself. I wasn't changing truth. I was helping it speak louder. When I finished, the image was breathtaking. Hope and despair perfectly balanced. the kind of symmetry critics call divine. That was the night I committed my first beautiful crime. A crime of intention disguised as art. The image went viral. By morning, editors from Time and Reuters were calling. They said it captured the soul of conflict. They called me a genius, a visionary, a moral voice. They didn't see the small brushstroke of red that didn't belong. They didn't feel the warmth I had painted onto death. I told myself I deserved the praise. I had risked my life, hadn't I? But deep down, beneath the applause, I felt hollow. As if every cheer was one more layer of dust covering Rami's face. Fame arrived like a storm. Sudden, addictive, impossible to escape. I was invited to conferences, festivals, exhibitions. Panels titled The Eye of Truth, Witnesses of History. They introduced me as the conscience of modern war photography. The irony was unbearable. At first, I enjoyed it. The lights, the interviews, the sense that I had mattered. But with every handshake, I felt something else fading. My own pulse of sincerity. Elena saw it first. In Milan, after one of my lectures, she found me drinking alone in the hotel bar. "Marco," she said softly, "when did you stop taking photos for the living?" I pretended not to understand, but her tone carried pity, not accusation, and somehow that hurt more. She showed me an email she'd received. It was from a woman in Homs, Rami's sister. She had seen the picture in a newspaper. She didn't recognize him. "He looks too calm," she wrote. "My brother died screaming." He wasn't reaching for sunlight. He was shielding his eyes. Those words cut through me. They undid the neat composition I had created. Because for the first time, I realized that my version of him, the poetic one, had replaced the real one. And maybe that was the most violent thing I'd ever done. I told Elena she was being sentimental, that art has to translate emotion. She just stared at me. "You mean control it," she said. And then she walked away. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every night, I dreamt of clicking shutters. Each click sounded like the closing of a coffin lid. When I woke up, I'd check my camera bag, half expecting to find blood on the lens. But I didn't stop. Addiction rarely ends in repentance. It ends in repetition. So I kept chasing the next perfect frame, the next story that could make the world cry. Because by then, I needed validation the way soldiers needed morphine. It dulled the pain of what I'd already done. The Pulitzer came the following year for another photograph, this one in Mosul, a mother holding her baby beneath a burning sky. The light was wrong again, too gray, too harsh. I adjusted it, added warmth, softened the smoke, deepened the baby's blanket into a richer red. It looked biblical, a modern pietà. When they called to tell me I'd won, I didn't cry. I just stared at the phone and thought of Rami's sister. Would she recognize this mother either? The ceremony was held in New York. 1,000 flashes erupted when I walked on stage. The applause was thunderous, mechanical. And in that storm of praise, I felt smaller than ever. Because applause doesn't fill you. It drains you until you're addicted to the echo. They gave me a gold plaque, engraved with my name. I smiled for the cameras, but inside, I felt like a thief of other people's pain. Afterward, I went back to my hotel, turned on the TV, and saw my own face under the headline, "Marco Bellini, the man who showed the world its conscience." I turned the TV off. The room went quiet. Then the guilt began to hum. Low, constant, like feedback from an old speaker. That's when I knew. I hadn't shown the world its conscience. I had erased my own. My father wrote me a letter soon after. He'd seen my photographs in an Italian magazine. "Marco," he said, "a good watch doesn't run fast, it runs true. A broken one still shows the right time twice a day. Which are you?" I never answered. Maybe because I didn't know. Maybe because I already suspected the truth. I wasn't a watch anymore. I was the ticking itself, detached from time, running without meaning. The night after the award, I woke to a sound, a faint clicking from inside my camera bag. I thought it was imagination, but when I unzipped it, I saw the lens cap had cracked, a thin fracture running across it, like a single line of lightning caught in glass. I traced it with my finger. It felt cold, almost alive. For a moment, I thought I heard the shutter go off, once, softly, as if the camera itself had taken a picture of me. That was when I realized something terrifying. I had become the subject of my own deception, and I didn't know how to escape the frame anymore. Elena left the front lines soon after. She sent me one last message before disappearing from the circuits. There's a difference between truth that saves and truth that sells. You're standing on the wrong side of the lens. I stared at that sentence for hours. Then I deleted it, but it stayed, printed somewhere deeper than memory. I still tell myself I can justify it, that the world needed those images, that the emotion mattered more than accuracy, that without the edits no one would have cared. But when I close my eyes, I see them. All the people I turned into symbols, all the moments I improved until they were no longer real. Their silence fills me, heavier than applause ever did. I don't remember when ambition turned into guilt. Maybe it was always the same thing, just viewed from a different exposure. I only know this. The moment you edit pain, you become part of it. And the moment the world calls you a hero for showing it, you've already lost your humanity. They say success smells like champagne. For me, it smelled like burning film. After the Pulitzer, everything blurred. Flights, interviews, galleries, my life became a slideshow of applause. Everywhere I went, someone said the same thing. You changed how we see war. But no one asked if I could still see it. I stopped sleeping. Not from nightmares, from noise. Every city hummed with recognition. Paris, Berlin, New York. I learned how to pose beside my own work. I learned how to smile when people cried in front of it. They wept for the suffering on the wall, not knowing the man beside them had created it twice. Once with a camera, once with deceit. I told myself it was noble deceit, that beauty could awaken empathy, that an edited truth was better than an ignored one. But each lie needed another to sustain it, and soon I was living entirely in the darkroom. When the magazine commissions multiplied, I became untouchable. The network called me the man with the moral eye. I laughed at that title, privately, bitterly, because the moral eye sees too much and too little at once. You start editing the world itself, the conversations, the guilt, even your reflection. Elena once said the camera is a mirror that lies beautifully. I think that's why I couldn't stop looking through it. The lens made guilt abstract. Through it, I could frame suffering at a distance, make it cinematic, controllable. But distance corrupts empathy. You start confusing observation with salvation. I moved to Rome for a year, living in a penthouse that smelled of developer fluid and expensive whiskey. I told myself I needed rest, but what I needed was noise, something louder than conscience. Every evening, I'd host editors, curators, young photographers. They came to praise me, to touch the myth. I played the role perfectly. I told stories about bullets missing me by inches, of mothers who begged to be photographed, of the sacred duty to bear witness. And every time I said those words, bear witness, a part of me flinched, because I no longer witnessed anything. I composed everything. Then came the Paris exhibition, Light in Darkness. Hundreds of my prints on white walls, spotlights gliding over frozen agony. Crowds lined up for hours. They whispered in reverence, as if the photographs were relics. I watched them cry and take selfies in front of my work. One man even kissed the glass beneath the image of the mother and child, the same image I had colorized to perfection. That night, the curator raised a glass. "To Marco Bellini," he said, "the man who gave war a soul." Everyone clapped. I smiled. But the words echoed like a curse. Gave war a soul. No, I'd taken one. Later that evening, alone in my hotel room, I noticed a message in my inbox. Subject line, "You forgot someone." It came from an anonymous address. Inside was a single photo, unedited, raw. Rami's photo. The one I had taken before the retouching. The shadows were heavy, the colors cold. No divine light, no cinematic red. Just dust, fear, silence. It looked real. Too real. The sender had written one sentence. "This is the truth you deleted." I didn't reply. I poured myself a drink and stared at both versions, his and mine. Side by side, they felt like before and after death, and I couldn't tell which one lived longer. Weeks later, I was in Berlin for another show. There, I met Nadia, a young photojournalist from Poland. She idolized me. She said my work made her believe in moral photography again. I wanted to warn her, to tell her there was no such thing. Instead, I let her believe the myth. I even began mentoring her, showing her editing techniques, lighting, framing. The more she admired me, the smaller I felt. One night, we drank too much. She asked what it felt like to save the world one image at a time. I laughed so hard I almost cried. "Saving the world?" I said. "No, Nadia, I sell it." She didn't understand, and I didn't explain. The next morning, the newspapers ran a story. Bellini in talks for United Nations project on global empathy through photography. Empathy, again. The word had lost all taste. It was the currency of the self-righteous. I took the assignment anyway. Money, prestige, exposure. It was all part of the performance. They sent me to the refugee camps near the Turkish border. Thousands of faces behind wire, light filtered through dust. Perfect compositions. I should have felt something. Instead, I only thought about the angles. One boy, maybe 12, asked me, "Will this photo help us go home?" I couldn't answer, because I knew the truth. Photographs don't save anyone. They just decorate pain. I took the picture anyway. And when I developed it, the boy's face was overexposed, white, almost glowing. I edited it down, sculpted the contrast until he looked like an icon, a martyr of displacement. The photo went viral again. The UN used it in a campaign. They called it the Hope of the Forgotten. Hope. I'd painted it where there was none, and the world thanked me for it. The money poured in. Sponsorships, collaborations, documentaries about my moral courage. I bought a Leica plated in gold. I wore it around my neck like a cross. I became my own religion, one built on false miracles. Nadia followed me on assignment for a while, but one day she asked a question that froze me. Do you ever feel like the camera's judging you? I looked at her and saw my younger self, the one who once believed in truth. Every day, I said. She smiled, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. That night, I dreamed again of Rami, the soldier. Only this time, he was standing in a gallery looking at my photos. He turned to me and asked, "Why did you change my death?" I woke up sweating, heart pounding. But I didn't delete the dream. I wrote it down, because I knew it was realer than any of my work. Months later, I returned to Florence for a retrospective. My parents attended, my father in his old suit, my mother with trembling hands. They stood quietly before the image that made me famous. He studied it for a long time and said, "You found light in darkness, Marco. But be careful. Too much light blinds." I wanted to tell him everything about the edits, the guilt, the growing emptiness behind the flashbulbs, but I didn't. Because the moment I spoke the truth, the myth would die. And I didn't know who I was without it. Then came the letter. Thick envelope, no return address. Inside, a photograph, the real one again. And a note, written in shaky handwriting. He was my son. Thank you for remembering him, but not like that. There was no signature, but I knew. Rami's mother. I felt something crack inside me, small but final. Because mothers never lie. They don't need to. That night, I took the Pulitzer plaque out of its case. The gold glinted like a wound. I held it over a candle until the surface blistered, then dropped it into a metal bowl. The smoke curled upward, smelling like old chemicals and burned pride. When it cooled, I crushed the ash into my camera bag, right beside the cracked lens cap, so that every time I lifted the camera, I'd remember what truth costs. I didn't tell anyone. The magazines still printed my stories. The galleries still invited me. But something had changed in me. The click of the shutter no longer sounded like creation. It sounded like apology. I started to photograph differently, slower, quieter, with less perfection. People said my new work lacked the Bellini intensity. I told them that was the point. But fame doesn't like humility. It feeds on drama, not honesty. And slowly, the world began to move on, to younger, hungrier eyes. Good, let them. Because the lie had finally stopped being beautiful. Fame fades quietly, not like thunder, but like the slow dimming of a bulb you didn't notice was dying. At first, I thought it was just the market. New faces, new wars, new tragedies to decorate. But what was really fading was me. I still had money, awards, my name engraved on plaques. But the calls came less often, the interviews shorter. People began to say, Bellini? He was great once. That word, once. It echoes longer than any applause. When the truth finally caught up to me, it didn't arrive as scandal or accusation. It came as an email from an editor I trusted. Subject: Re-authenticity concern. Attached was a side-by-side comparison. My Pulitzer photograph and the unedited frame. Someone had leaked it. The soldier's real hand, the dull light, the colorless sky, and then my version, radiant and false. There was no message in the body of the email, just 2 pictures, like before and after guilt. I remember staring at them until the screen blurred. Then I turned off the computer and sat in the dark. That's when I heard it, a low mechanical hum. It took me a moment to realize it was my heart. By morning, the story had broken. Pulitzer winner under fire for digital manipulation. It spread like rot through the wires. Blogs, news feeds, opinion columns. Everyone had an opinion. No one had the full story. Some said I was a fraud. Others called me a victim of artistic double standards. The rest just enjoyed the spectacle. A man once crowned for truth, now crucified by it. I tried to defend myself at first. I said the edits were aesthetic corrections, that my intent was emotional accuracy, not deceit. But no one cared about intent, only betrayal. The award committee withdrew the Pulitzer within a week. My sponsors canceled contracts. Even my agent stopped answering calls. One evening, I stepped outside my apartment in Rome, and a tourist recognized me. He said, "You're that photographer who lied about war, right?" I wanted to scream that everyone lies about war. Governments, soldiers, journalists, even memory itself. But I said nothing, because he wasn't wrong. I spent the next months in isolation, drinking, editing old photos no one would ever see. I'd zoom into every pixel, every shadow, searching for something real in the ruins of artifice. But truth hides from those who betrayed it. I could only find fragments. Sometimes I'd take my camera out at night, walk through empty streets, and photograph stray reflections in shop windows. The glass would catch my face beside a mannequin, and I'd think, that's the truest image I've ever made. Elena called once. I hadn't heard her voice in years. She didn't ask about the scandal. She just said, "Maybe now you'll start taking real pictures." Then she hung up. Her words didn't hurt. They healed. Because she was right. You can't fake truth once you've lost everything else. One night, I dreamed of Rami again. He wasn't reaching this time. He was just standing there, holding his camera toward me. "Your turn," he said. And when I pressed the shutter, it was my face in the frame. Not the man who chased wars, but the boy from Florence, still believing beauty could save the world. When I woke, the dawn light filled the room like forgiveness. But forgiveness is just another kind of exposure. Too much, and you see everything. The newspapers moved on. New scandals, new heroes. No one stays crucified for long when the world scrolls this fast. But my name was a stain that didn't fade. Even when people forgot, I didn't. Every time I lifted a camera, I felt the tremor. Not fear of dying, but fear of lying again. One afternoon, I visited the Florence Museum of Contemporary Photography. They had removed my exhibit months before, but one print remained in storage. The original Eyes of the War Child from Sarajevo. I asked to see it. The curator hesitated, then led me into a quiet room. When the lights flicked on, there it was, a boy's face, half in shadow, his pupils reflecting distant fire. I remembered that day, how he'd asked if the camera could bring his father back. Back then, I said nothing. Now, I whispered, "No, but it can bury him twice." I walked out without the print. It didn't belong to me anymore. Months passed. I sold my apartment, gave away my equipment, kept only one camera, the one I'd used in Aleppo, cracked lens and all. Sometimes I think it still remembers what I did. When I lift it to my eye, the world appears fractured through that line of glass. But maybe that's honest now. Because truth, I've learned, isn't whole. It's broken, trembling, half-lit, like the people who try to capture it. There were days I wanted to disappear completely. I thought of walking into the sea with my camera, letting the tide erase both. But the sea doesn't erase. It archives. And I didn't deserve to be remembered that way. So I stayed. Alive, but unedited. Then one day, a letter arrived. Thick paper, no return address. Inside, a photograph. It was the real one again. Rami's hand, the doll, the dust. Only this time, there was something else written on the back. He forgave you. I don't know who sent it. Maybe his mother, maybe Elena, maybe no one real at all. But for the first time in years, I didn't reach for the contrast tool. I didn't touch the light. I just looked. And for that one moment, the picture didn't accuse me. It simply existed, as if truth had finally stopped demanding perfection. I took the photo and pinned it above my desk. Below it, I wrote a note in pencil. Don't improve what's already honest. It became the only rule I live by. Still, some nights I hear the old rhythm, the applause, the clicks, the cameras flashing like lightning. In those moments, I feel the hunger again, that twisted need to be seen, to be remembered. But then I open the camera bag. Inside, beneath the cracked lens cap, is a pinch of gray dust, the ashes of the Pulitzer. Every time I see them, I remember that fame burns faster than truth and leaves colder remains. I sometimes visit workshops now, quiet rooms in art schools where students still believe photography can save the world. They ask me about composition, lighting, storytelling. But what I tell them is simpler. Don't photograph what's beautiful. Photograph what hurts to look at. Because that's what I couldn't do. I made suffering beautiful, and in doing so, I made empathy impossible. Now, when I look through the viewfinder, I no longer seek balance or symmetry. I wait for imperfection, for something trembling, uneven, alive. And when I press the shutter, it's no longer to capture. It's to let go. There is a silence that follows ruin. Not the silence of peace. The silence of truth finally refusing to argue. For years I thought redemption was something earned. But you don't earn forgiveness. You learn to stop resisting it. And for me, it began with a train ride back to the beginning. I returned to Florence, after almost a decade away. The city looked smaller, slower, almost embarrassed to see me again. The cobblestones still shone when it rained, and the air still smelled of espresso and wet stone. But I wasn't the man who'd left it chasing light. I was the shadow that light forgot. I took a small room above my father's old workshop. The same ticking filled the walls. Tiny gears grinding in time, each clock a whisper reminding me. Precision isn't truth, it's control. Those words of his came back, clearer than ever. And this time I didn't argue. He was gone now. My mother, too. The room was a museum of their patience. Unfinished watches, folded linens, dust settling like forgiveness over everything I'd once ignored. In those quiet months, I lived without a camera. I thought I'd retired, but it felt more like exile. I tried to write instead. Letters I'd never send. To Rami's mother, to Elena, to my younger self. Each one started the same way. I'm sorry for the beauty I stole. Sometimes in the market square, people recognized me. They'd whisper, not unkindly, "That's him, the photographer who lied." It didn't sting anymore. It just felt accurate. I didn't deny it because denial is just another kind of editing. One morning I visited my old art school. They'd invited me, cautiously, to speak to students. The director had said, "If you're ready to talk about truth again." I told him, I'm not. But maybe they are. The lecture hall was small, maybe 40 students, fresh faces, full of certainty. They looked at me the way I used to look at war photographers, like survivors of something divine. I told them a story, not about fame or the Pulitzer or the fall. I told them about the soldier, the boy, the doll, about how I changed a sky to make it beautiful, and in doing so, made a life unrecognizable. I said, we all think our job is to make people feel something, but the real job is harder. It's to not interfere with what's already sacred. Silence filled the room. No applause, no questions. Just the kind of silence that means someone finally heard you. After the talk, a student approached me, a young woman with trembling hands and a second-hand camera. She said, "Do you still take pictures?" I told her, no. But I still see them. That night, I walked by the Arno River. The water glowed with the reflections of street lamps, soft gold trembling on dark ripples. I thought of all the places I'd photographed rivers of blood, and how this one, quiet, indifferent, felt more honest. I sat on the bridge and pulled out the small cracked camera I'd kept all these years, the one that had seen too much and remembered everything. I lifted it, half out of habit, but then lowered it again. For the first time, I didn't need proof. The moment itself was enough. The truth didn't need framing. It just needed presence. I whispered something, to no one, maybe to the ghosts of all those I had turned into symbols. I see you now, without edits, without light. The wind answered softly, moving through the bridge rails like a sigh. Weeks later, I received a small package with no sender's name. Inside was an envelope of photographs, grainy, old, unretouched. They were Rami's, the ones he'd taken before he died. The frames were imperfect, off-center, overexposed, but they were real. You could feel the tremor of his hand in each one. Children laughing behind sandbags, soldiers sharing bread, a cat curled up beside an empty rifle. Life, messy and unedited. I cried for the first time in years, not out of guilt but gratitude, because someone had finally shown me what I'd been trying to find through perfection, truth that breathes. I decided to curate one final exhibition. No sponsors, no press. just a small room above the workshop. I called it Light Without Lens. On the walls, I pinned Rami's photos beside mine, the untouched beside the glorified. Visitors came in silence, their reflections merging with both truths. Some cried, some left without a word. I didn't explain the contrast. I just let the pictures argue among themselves. Because sometimes the only way to confess is to let evidence speak. On the last night of the exhibit, I turned off the lights and stood alone in the dark. Through the window, the moonlight traced faint outlines of every frame. It felt like the ghosts of those I'd photographed had come to watch me finally see them. I whispered, "I'm sorry for giving pain a price." And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not peace, but humility. The kind that comes when you stop looking for redemption and start accepting the weight of what you've done. I think that's what confession really is. Not words, not forgiveness, but standing in the dark with the lights off and realizing the image still exists, even without you. When I left the gallery, dawn was rising. Florence was waking, the bells echoing across the river. I walked with my camera bag hanging loosely at my side, the ashes of the award still inside. They no longer felt like punishment. They felt like ballast, the necessary weight to keep me steady. As I crossed the Ponte Vecchio, I caught my reflection in a jeweler's window. Older, thinner, softer. No cameras, no headlines. Just a man with empty hands, finally ready to hold something real again. I whispered, "Truth isn't light. It's what survives after the light fades." And for once, I believed it. The world doesn't wait for redemption. It just keeps turning, leaving behind those who stop to look back. But I've learned that slowing down isn't defeat. It's remembrance. I still live above the workshop in Florence. The clocks keep ticking, measuring a quieter kind of time. Sometimes when I wake at dawn, I hear the first bell from Santa Croce and think of shutter clicks. But now the rhythm doesn't haunt me. It hums. I take walks through the streets with no destination. Markets, alleys, laundries, faces, ordinary light. And every once in a while I lift my camera, the same cracked one, heavy with memory. I don't wait for perfection anymore. I just wait for honesty. Most photos never leave the roll. I don't need them to. They're not trophies. They're confessions made visible. Small proofs that I can still see without wanting to own. One afternoon, as I sat in the piazza sketching shadows, a boy approached, barefoot, hair wild, a disposable camera hanging from his wrist. He asked if I was the photographer who used to be famous. I smiled. "I used to be many things," I said. He lifted his camera, snapped my picture without asking, and laughed. "I just wanted to remember your face," he said, "in case you're famous again." His laughter stayed with me long after he ran off. It reminded me of the war children I'd once turned into symbols, how easily innocence forgives what history cannot. I didn't chase him for the photo. Some truths aren't meant to be owned twice. That night, I sat by the window with the cracked lens beside me. Through it, the city lights looked fractured but alive. And I thought, maybe that's how we all see, through damaged glass, trying to make sense of the fragments. Months later, I received a letter from Elena. Her handwriting, steady, precise, same as always. She'd seen the small exhibition, Light Without Lens. She wrote, "I'm glad you finally stopped speaking for the dead. The living need you more." Inside the envelope was a single photograph, a snapshot she'd taken years ago in Aleppo, of me standing beside a collapsed wall, camera lowered, eyes half closed. She had written on the back, "This is the first honest picture of you." I kept it pinned on the wall above my desk. No edits, no frame, just tape and paper, the way memories are supposed to exist, unprotected, vulnerable. I began teaching photography again, not in universities or festivals, but in youth centers, orphanages, places where stories never reach headlines. I told my students to start without cameras, to learn to see before they learn to shoot, to wait, to listen, to understand that light is just borrowed truth. Sometimes they ask why I still carry the ashes of my Pulitzer. I tell them it's a reminder that art isn't supposed to make us gods. It's supposed to make us human again. And they listen, because young hearts still believe that seeing is sacred. Maybe they're right. One evening, after class, a girl stayed behind. She was quiet, shy, maybe 16. She said she wanted to photograph her mother's hands, wrinkled, tired, beautiful, but she was afraid they weren't good enough. I told her, good enough is the enemy of real. Take the picture before you start improving it. A week later, she returned with a print. It was imperfect, slightly blurred, uneven exposure, but it was alive. It reminded me of Rami's photographs, the ones untouched by ego or editing. I realized then that truth doesn't vanish with us. It waits, quietly, for someone else to look. There are still moments when guilt returns, unexpected, soft as dust. A smell, a sound, a flash of red cloth in sunlight. They come without warning, but I don't run from them anymore. They're part of the lens I now live behind. Sometimes I visit the river again. I take the old camera, point it at the water, and press the shutter. The frame always comes out different, blurred, broken, too bright. But that's the beauty of it. Each imperfection feels like truth learning to breathe again. I've stopped believing in redemption, but I believe in continuing, in carrying what we've done until it teaches us to see. That, I think, is enough. Because forgiveness doesn't erase the scar. It teaches you how to touch it without bleeding. Sometimes when I walk home at night, the streetlights flicker across the stones, casting long, imperfect shadows. And I think, maybe all photography ever was, is humanity trying to remember itself through light and loss. I used to chase that light. Now I let it find me. If I've learned anything, it's that a photograph doesn't need to change the world. It just needs to tell the truth to one heart at a time, even if that heart is your own. So I still carry my camera, still wander, still wait for the next moment that doesn't need improvement. And when I find it, I lift the lens and whisper the same quiet prayer I've said ever since. Don't make it beautiful. The shutter closes. The sound is small, but inside it, I hear everything. The boy's laughter, the soldier's hand, the ticking of my father's watch, and the echo of a truth I no longer need to hide. The world forgives the lie when you finally dare to tell it in the light.